Hi everyone, welcome back and thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. Charles and Ivanka had been married for several years. From the outside, they looked like a normal couple, two people building a life together. But behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Their marriage was far from easy. Arguments had become a routine, some over small things, some over bigger issues. But they all seemed to point to one truth. There was a growing disconnect between them. Charles, despite everything, loved his wife deeply. He wasn't perfect, but he did his best to provide for their future. They had been saving for a house, a goal that Charles held onto like a lifeline. He imagined a future where they could finally settle into a place they could call their own. But Ivanka saw things differently. One evening, it started like any other argument, small, almost insignificant. Charles had just come home from work, exhausted, looking forward to a quiet evening. But the tension was already in the air. Ivanka had asked for something, and Charles had reminded her they would not be able to afford it at the moment. Ivanka was not buying the excuse. And as always, the argument quickly turned into something else, something bigger, deeper, and much more painful. Ivanka's tone was sharp. It's easy for her to make Charles feel like he was always the problem, like he wasn't doing enough, even when he was giving his all. "Why do I have to explain this to you over and over again?" she snapped, rolling her eyes. Charles tried to stay calm, to keep his voice steady. "Ivanka, I'm trying here. I really am. But it feels like nothing I do is ever enough for you." Ivanka let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Trying? That's what you call this? This isn't trying, Charles. This is just you doing the bare minimum and expecting me to be grateful for it." The words cut deeper than she realized. Charles could feel his frustration bubbling under the surface. "Bare minimum?" he repeated. He wanted to remind her of everything he had done, the long hours, the savings, the sacrifices. But what was the point? It wouldn't change anything. Ivanka's dismissive attitude stung the most. She didn't care. Charles felt his patience snap. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He needed air, space, anything but this suffocating feeling of never being enough. "I can't do this right now," he muttered under his breath as he walked out, leaving Ivanka standing there unfazed. He had no idea that this night was about to change everything. Charles had barely made it down the street before he realized his mistake. In his rush to leave, he had forgotten his wallet and card on the kitchen counter. Annoyed at himself, but knowing he couldn't go far without it, he turned around and headed back home. When he got home, he pushed the door open as quietly as possible, not wanting to trigger another argument just yet. But the moment he stepped inside, he heard Ivanka's voice. She was on the phone. At first, he wasn't paying attention. He was only focused on grabbing his wallet and leaving before she noticed he was back. But then, her words stopped him cold in his tracks. "I settled for less." A chill ran down his spine. His heartbeat picked up, hammering against his ribs as his fingers hovered over his wallet. "I should have been with Declan, but I needed stability." Charles felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She continued, "Charles is a good man, but not the one I truly wanted from the start." At that moment, everything made sense to Charles. The way her affection always seemed forced. The arguments, the cold distance between them. The way she always seemed like she was enduring their marriage instead of living in it. It wasn't just about money. It never was. She meant emotionally, too. She had never been in love with him the way he was with her. Charles picked up his wallet and card from the living room and walked out of the house, shutting the door behind him without making a sound. The night air was cool against the skin, but it did nothing to numb the sharp sting of what he had just heard. He didn't know where he was going at first. His feet carried him down the familiar streets. Eventually, he found himself at a bar. It wasn't one he usually went to, but that didn't matter. He just needed somewhere to sit, somewhere to think, somewhere to let the truth sink in without it suffocating him completely. He ordered a beer, took a sip, and let the bitterness settle on his tongue. but it couldn't compare to the bitterness he felt inside. Ivanka had never truly wanted him. He had spent years fighting for a future with her, believing that their struggles were temporary, that their love, his love, was worth every sacrifice. But it had all been meaningless. She had settled, and in doing so, had unknowingly trapped him in a marriage built on nothing but convenience. The thought of confronting her crossed his mind. But what was the point? What would he say? That he knew the truth? That he had heard every word? She might apologize, maybe even cry, but it wouldn't change the fact that her heart had never belonged to him. As he stared at the amber liquid in his glass, a quiet yet drastic decision formed in his mind. He would leave. Not just for the night, not just to cool off, but for good. He would disappear, erase every trace of himself from her life, and give her exactly what she wanted: the freedom to be with whoever she truly desired. There was no reason to stay. No reason to fight for something that had never been real. He ordered another beer, letting the decision settle deep within him. This was the last night he would spend as Ivanka's husband. By morning he would be gone. That night, while Ivanka slept, Charles sat in the dim glow of his laptop screen. If she wanted to be with another man, he wouldn't stand in her way. But he also wouldn't leave empty-handed. He logged into their joint savings account. It wasn't difficult. He had always been the one managing their finances. The numbers stared back at him. They had been saving to buy a house. He took what was his 80% of the funds, the portion he had single-handedly contributed. But instead of withdrawing cash, he moved the money strategically, purchasing resellable assets online. Electronics, rare collectibles, and valuable items that could easily be liquidated later. He left nothing to chance. Once the transactions were complete, he cleared any trace of them from his emails, ensuring that Ivanka wouldn't be able to track his next moves. Then he turned his attention to what came next. With quiet efficiency, Charles packed only the essentials: important documents, enough clothes to last for a while, anything that could help him rebuild elsewhere. He had no intention of taking anything sentimental. There was nothing here worth holding on to anymore. Before leaving, he sat at the desk, staring at the blank sheet of paper in front of him. He didn't need many words. The truth had already been spoken, just not to his face. He picked up a pen and wrote with a steady hand. "I overheard everything. I won't stand in the way of your happiness. Go settle with your ideal partner." No accusations. No confrontation. Just a final goodbye. By morning, Charles was gone. Ivanka woke up expecting another ordinary morning. Her eyes landed on the note when she got out of bed. It sat on the table, waiting for her. The moment she read the words, her stomach dropped. He knew. Panic surged through her veins when she realized he had left. Not for a few hours, not to cool off, but for good. And worst of all, she had pushed him to this, without even realizing it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone, dialing his number, waiting, hoping. But the line was disconnected. She tried again, and again. Nothing. Her fingers moved quickly, opening her email. She typed a message, keeping it short. But when she hit send, the response was immediate. Undelivered. Her breathing became uneven as she checked social media, scrolling through her contacts, and searching for his profile. Completely erased. It was as if he had never been there at all. Desperation creeping in, she called his workplace, thinking maybe, just maybe, he had gone there, but they never picked up. Hours of trying later, the receptionist answered, and Ivanka forced her voice to stay steady as she asked about Charles. The response came back casual. "Oh, Charles? He resigned this morning. Sent an email before office hours. Effective immediately." Ivanka's grip tightened on the phone. He had planned this. This wasn't some impulsive reaction to their argument. He had been deliberate, thoughtful. He had taken the time to erase every trace of himself from her world. He had vanished, leaving her with nothing but a note and the consequences of her own words. She had spent so long believing Charles was just there, But now standing alone in an empty house, staring at the last thing he had ever left for her, she realized she had finally pushed him too far. And there was nothing she could do to take it back. With Charles gone, Ivanka no longer had to hide. There was no need for secrecy, no need to pretend. She turned fully to Declan, the man she had considered her true choice all along. The affair, which had once existed in whispers and stolen moments, was now out in the open. No husband was standing in the way, no guilt weighing on her conscience. At first, it felt like everything had fallen into place. Declan said all the right things, made her feel desired, and reassured her that she had made the right decision. With him, there was passion, excitement, and a sense of freedom that she believed Charles could never offer. This was the life she had wanted, the life she felt she deserved. A few months after Charles vanished, Ivanka took the final step to erase him from her life completely. She filed for divorce, fully convinced that he would never return. Since he was nowhere to be found, the court issued a default judgment in her favor. Just like that, she was legally single, free to move forward without looking back. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But as time passed, cracks began to show. Declan was charming, but he was distant. He was present in the way that mattered least, in words, in surface-level affection. But when it came to real commitment, he was absent. He avoided serious conversations about the future, always changing the subject whenever she brought it up. Then, the truth began to unfold. Ivanka discovered that Declan was not as devoted to her as she had assumed. He still entertained other women, and still maintained relationships outside of theirs. What she had thought was a deep, passionate love turned out to be nothing more than a convenient arrangement for him. She had left a man who had given her his all for someone who never intended to offer her the same. The comparisons began. The things she once resented about Charles now resurfaced in a different light. Charles, despite their many arguments, had always been reliable. He had been present, not just physically, but emotionally. Even when they fought, he had stayed, fought for their marriage, and believed in their future. He had sacrificed his comfort, his dreams, and even his finances to build something solid with her. Declan, on the other hand, had given her nothing but temporary excitement. There were no real sacrifices, no stability, no certainty in what they were building because, in truth, they had been building nothing at all. And then, the realization hit her. She had never truly settled for less. She had thrown away something real for an illusion. What she had with Charles was not perfect, but it was genuine. What she had with Declan was everything she thought she wanted, but it was never meant to last. Years had passed. Ivanka was still single. The man she once believed was her true love, her ideal partner, never became what she expected. Declan, the man she thought she should have chosen from the start, avoided any real conversation about marriage. Whenever she brought it up, he brushed it off, changed the subject, or outright dismissed it. At first, she told herself it was just timing, that he wasn't ready yet. Eventually, he would commit to her the way she had left everything behind for him. But as the years dragged on, it became harder to ignore the truth staring her in the face. Declan was never serious about her. The reality hit like a slow, painful drip. She had left her marriage thinking she was choosing real love, but she had only become one of his many side pieces. Whenever they argued about it, Declan never held back from reminding her of one thing. "I never asked you to leave your husband." That sentence cut her every time. It left her humiliated, angry, but most of all regretful. Because he was right. He never promised her forever. He never asked her to walk away from Charles. That had been her choice, a choice she could never take back. And now, every now and then, she found herself thinking about Charles. Where was he now? Did he move on? Did he find someone new? Did he build the life they once planned, but with another woman? These thoughts came in waves, creeping up on her when she least expected them. The more she ignored them, the stronger they became. She had a man who loved her, a man who wanted to build a life with her, and she threw it all away for someone who never saw her as more than an option. And that's the story. So, what can we learn from this? Sometimes, we don't realize the value of what we have until it's gone. It's easy to overlook the efforts of someone who truly cares, only to regret it when they are no longer there. People often chase what they think they want, believing that something or someone better is waiting for them. But in the end, they come to realize that they had what they needed all along. Words have power. The things we say about our partners, especially in moments when we think they aren't listening, can either strengthen or completely break a relationship. Love isn't just about emotions or excitement. It's about trust, respect, and genuine companionship. If those things are missing, no amount of passion can make up for it. If you don't appreciate someone's presence, you may have to deal with their absence. Charles walked away, not out of anger, but because he understood that staying in a place where he wasn't truly wanted would only cause more harm. Some people believe in fighting for love no matter what. Others know when it's time to let go. So, what do you think? Do you believe Charles made the right decision by leaving, or should he have stayed and fought for his marriage? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, take care and stay wise. Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Charles. When someone you love turns around and throws everything you've built together in your face, you're left with two options. Either you break down, or you stand up and do something about it. When my girlfriend, Allison, texted me that she found someone else and wanted nothing more to do with me, I made a move she never saw coming. And before the week was over, it was her lawyer calling me. I had met Allison through a female friend I trusted at a point in my life when things finally started making sense. I had been working at the firm for 3 years. I showed up, I did my work, and I made sure people could rely on me. Over time, that effort began to pay off. The higher-ups noticed. I got called in one afternoon by the senior partner, and after a very short but serious conversation, I walked out with a promotion letter in hand. Now, it wasn't some overnight miracle. I earned it every late night, every weekend spent reviewing contracts instead of relaxing. But still, it felt good. The promotion came with better pay, a monthly allowance, and even a company-issued SUV. It was sleek enough that when I parked it in front of my old apartment, it looked out of place. That's when I realized it was time to move. My life was moving forward, and I wanted everything around me to reflect that. I found a better place in a quieter neighborhood. I told this female friend I was open to meeting someone. A week or two later, she said, I might know someone. She's a bit of a quiet type, but I think you two would get along. That's how I linked with Allison. From the moment we met, I felt something different. She was sweet, ambitious, and emotionally supportive in those early days. I'll be honest, part of why I gave her the benefit of the doubt early on was because of the friend who introduced us. I trusted her judgment. I believed that she wouldn't link me up with someone who wasn't solid. So I assumed Allison came pre-vetted. Months later, when our relationship started getting serious, Allison began going through some tough times financially. She'd say she was short on groceries that week or that she needed to sort out some minor bills. I didn't think much of it. I helped. It wasn't a burden, and I was happy to be able to make things easier for her. She told me one night while we were talking over dinner that she was getting tired of the corporate grind. Said the 9 to 5 world wasn't for her anymore. That she wanted something different. Something on her own terms. She had this dream of running an online store, selling fashion items, accessories, and lifestyle products. I nodded, encouraged her a bit, and asked her what the plan was. How she'd structure the store, how she'd market it. Just trying to understand her vision. But it wasn't until maybe a week or two later that I found out she had already quit her job. She hadn't mentioned a word of it to me beforehand. I remember her finally telling me, and I paused and looked at her, then asking, "Wait, what preparations did you make before quitting?" She told me she had saved up a little money. I asked how much. When she said the figure, I felt my heart sink. That money wouldn't have lasted her more than a month. Maybe 2 if she really stretched it. No steady source of income while she built the shop from the ground up. I pressed her gently. asking if she considered the time it usually takes for a business to break even, let alone make a profit. She brushed it off, told me not to worry, said she had a solid plan, and she was confident things would start moving in a few weeks. She sounded so sure of herself that, for a second, I actually doubted my doubts. But deep down, I had reservations. I've seen what failed businesses do to people, how quickly dreams can become debt. But I didn't push. I figured she'd prove me wrong. Well, she didn't. The online store flopped almost immediately. Sales weren't coming in. The products weren't moving. The money she thought would last stretched thinner by the week. Before long, her rent was overdue. Then one day, she called me crying because her car had been repossessed. I could see the fear and embarrassment in her eyes. She was clearly overwhelmed and spiraling. I wasn't going to stand there and watch someone I loved fall apart. So I told her to move in with me. I had space, and I was already paying for everything myself, so it just made sense. I also handed her the keys to my old car. It was still running fine, and since I was using the company's SUV, I didn't really need it. Not long after she moved in, I started receiving strange calls. At first, I ignored the numbers because they looked like spam. But one day, I picked up, and on the other end was someone saying, "Your girlfriend owes us money. If she doesn't pay soon, we'll be taking legal action." I was blindsided. I had no idea who they were or how they even got my number. And more importantly, I had no idea Allison was in debt. She hadn't mentioned it. Not even a hint. I told them I'd look into it and ended the call. Then I tried calling her right away. No answer. I left a voice note needing answers. Hours later, she texted back. Said she was sorry, admitted the debt was real. Blamed it on the business failure. Said she was trying to handle it on her own. Then she sent me a voice note begging me to help her pay it off. She promised to pay me back when she figured things out. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't happy because of the secrecy. I would have understood if she'd come to me early. But to let it get to the point where strangers were calling me at work, threatening legal action, that rubbed me the wrong way. Still, I paid the debt. Eventually, she asked for a loan to restart the business. She came to me with a plan this time, told me what she'd learned from a first attempt, what she'd do differently, how she'd build slow and steady. I listened, and I gave her the money. She started using my old laptop. I didn't think twice about it. She needed it for work, and I wasn't using it. Over time, my apartment slowly turned into our place in her eyes. But in reality, I was the one handling every bill. She said she was focusing on rebuilding her brand and needed time to reinvest profits. I agreed. I was patient. I believed in her. After months of trial and error, things began to pick up. Her site started getting real traffic. Orders were coming in. People were tagging her business online. For the first time, it felt like her dream might finally have legs. I was genuinely happy for her. I'd always planned to marry her. That wasn't new, but I held off for a reason. Now that her business could pay its own bills, and she no longer had to ask me for every little thing, I felt it was the right time. I didn't tell her, of course. Quietly, I reached out to her sister and told her what I was planning. I asked for her help in choosing a setting that felt like Allison, something that would catch her off guard in the best way. Meanwhile, I ordered a custom ring. It took a decent chunk out of my savings, but I didn't care. I was fully invested. But before all my plans could materialize, one night everything changed. We were both tired on that day. It had been a long day. I had just returned from work, and she had spent most of her time packing up orders. Neither of us felt like cooking, so I offered to order food. She usually handled that because she already had a DoorDash account set up, while I never bothered. I picked up her phone like I had done many times before. But while I was looking for the app, something caught my eye. There was Tinder, a dating app, sitting there in the app drawer. My first thought was more confusion than anything else. I opened it and scrolled through dozens of messages. Men are flirting with her. Some of them were telling her how beautiful she was. Some are asking to meet up. Some say things I won't repeat. And worst of all, she was replying. Although there was nothing too deep, it wasn't innocent either. She was on there regularly. I called her name. Allison. She came into the living room, drying her hands with a kitchen towel. I just asked, "What is this?" I held out the phone, open to the app. She glanced at it, then shrugged and said, "Oh, that? It's nothing. I don't meet anyone. I just like the attention sometimes." I couldn't make sense of what she was saying. I looked through the messages again, and no, it didn't seem like she had met up with anyone yet. But that wasn't the point. The point was, what if I hadn't found out? What if it went further next week? Or the week after that? What kind of person downloads a dating app for attention while living with the man planning to marry her? That night, I found the dating app on Allison's phone, and something inside me changed. It was a quiet kind of disappointment that crept in and made me question everything. We had a routine. No matter how long the day had been, I always kissed her goodnight. Always held her close before we drifted off. But that night, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just lay there feeling hurt. I didn't even know how to pretend anymore. The next few days felt like walking through a minefield. Allison started acting differently, like she was looking for reasons to fight. She'd snap about what time I got home, question why I hadn't taken out the trash yet, or complain that I didn't notice the groceries she bought. It wasn't like these things had never happened before, but now they came with this edge I hadn't seen in her before. I started to wonder if she was trying to make me out to be the bad guy, just to make herself feel better about what she'd done. Maybe if I looked like the problem, she could sleep better at night. When I tried to talk to her, I told her that saying the app is just for harmless attention doesn't mean it's not a betrayal, because I couldn't wrap my head around that excuse. I told her that if she needed validation from strangers, we had a bigger issue. That's when the tables turned. She called me controlling, said I was too rigid and insecure. She flipped it all on me, like I was the one who'd crossed the line. One evening, we had a big fight. It started like the others, but when the exchange of words got heated, she grabbed her purse, her keys, and walked out. I sat on the couch for a while, thinking she'd cool off and come back like she usually did. But the hours dragged on, and the silence stretched longer. Around midnight, I sent her a simple text, "Where are you?" I got no reply. I stayed up, checking my phone every few minutes, trying not to jump to conclusions. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. It read, "I found someone else. I want nothing more to do with you. Don't call or text me again." My stomach dropped as I read. At first, I felt this wave of rage. Was she cheating on me all this time? Was this guy around when I was clearing her debts and putting her back on her feet? Or was this just her way of twisting the knife? I felt every emotion at once. But I didn't let it control me. Instead of blowing up her phone or demanding answers, I typed 3 words, "As you wish." And that was it. I didn't have the energy to argue with someone who had already moved on in her heart. I came home from work later that day and stepped into an apartment. It was obvious she had entered the house while I was at the office and packed everything she owned and some of my things too. She left with the car I lent her. The laptop she was using? Taken. Even some minor electronics and household items I had bought myself had vanished. That's when it really hit me. Her message wasn't a bluff. This wasn't temporary. She meant it. And in that moment, it was clear that I was done being the nice guy. I picked up my phone and texted my lawyer. I told him, "We need to talk. First thing tomorrow." Because if she wanted to end things like this, she was going to learn that I wasn't someone you could just walk over and forget. Not without consequences. The following morning, I walked into my lawyer's office. I sat across from him and told him about things my girlfriend had taken, the car, the laptop I let her use, and the debt trail tied to my pockets. I told him plainly, I want to recover everything. I worked hard for everything I gave her. And if she thinks she can leave like that and keep it all, she has another thing coming. He listened, took notes, and without needing much prompting, began drafting a formal letter. It demanded the immediate return of the car and laptop and repayment of the outstanding debts. It clearly stated that if she refused to comply, we would pursue legal action. I reviewed it, signed off, and then nothing. She didn't respond, not even a reply to acknowledge that she received it. Days passed. My lawyer followed up once. Still no answer. She was either ignoring it because she thought I wouldn't follow through, or because she believed I had no backbone. That's when we filed a formal complaint with the court. The court issued a summons, and it wasn't long before I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I picked up, thinking maybe it was a work call or someone from a firm. The voice on the other end introduced himself. He was her lawyer, and already trying to get ahead of the situation. His exact words were, "We need to discuss the situation. You can't just take everything." I took a breath and replied, "Actually, I can. And I will. In fact, I intend to take everything that's legally mine, and, if possible, more. Now, if you want to talk further, speak to my lawyer." Then I ended the call. From that moment on, everything went through legal channels. The court dates were set, documents submitted, and to her surprise, I had all the receipts, literally. Proof of ownership for the car. Purchase receipts for the laptop. Text messages where she acknowledged her debts and promised repayment. Bank statements showing the transfers. My lawyer said, "You've got a solid case. Don't budge." That was when Allison tried to shift the tone. She reached out through her lawyer this time, asking if we could settle privately. Suddenly, the same person who walked out like I was disposable wanted to negotiate. I simply told her she could return everything and reimburse me for every dime I spent clearing her debts. And since she ignored the letter and made me take the legal route, she could also cover my legal fees, or we'd proceed with the case. Eventually, she returned the car and the laptop. But when it came to the money, she said her business wasn't doing well and asked for time. She even tried appealing to my emotions, telling me she just needed some breathing room. I didn't argue. I told my lawyer to continue with the court process. The judge eventually set up a structured payment plan that she would have to stick to. By the time the court finalized the payment plan, I wasn't even angry anymore. Allison made the first payment on time. I'll give her that. A small part of me wondered if she'd follow through with the whole arrangement. Either way, I kept my distance and let the legal process run its course. But then the second month rolled around. I was sitting at my desk at the office, just wrapping up some paperwork, when I saw her name pop up on my phone. I paused for a second, thinking what it could be. When I opened the message, it was a voice note. I played it, and she was trying to sound warm again. She said she was sorry, said she regretted how she ended things, and that maybe we didn't have to be enemies. "Can we at least be friends?" she asked, saying the whole legal stuff made her feel cold and distant, like we were strangers now. I listened quietly. It was surreal hearing her try to pretend like the damage she did was just a bad breakup. I didn't respond with anger. I just texted back, "Please just focus on paying what you owe. No explanations needed." When I needed those explanations, you stayed silent. She didn't stop. Over the next few days, I got more messages. She started bringing up old memories. She was trying to pull me back emotionally, as if reminding me of the good times would erase how she left me. But I was tired. Tired of being used. Tired of being someone's emotional safety net when things didn't work out with their plan B. I didn't even have the energy to argue anymore. I just wanted this chapter of my life closed. So I typed one final message. All future communication should go through my lawyer. That's where this ends. And I meant it. Now I'm focused on moving forward, because I finally understand that protecting your peace sometimes means letting people deal with the consequences of their own decisions. I was a supportive partner once, but now I'm a man who knows what he deserves and what he no longer owes anyone.